I was 19 the first time I lived on my own. It wasn't really on my own, though. My parents had moved about 2 hours south, and instead of going with them, I rented the small guest house behind my uncle's place. It wasn't fancy. One floor, kitchen and living room mashed together, a single bedroom and bathroom. But for me, it was perfect. Independence without being too far away from family. The place backed up onto a long stretch of woods. During the day, it looked almost peaceful, like a wall of green that blocked out the world. At night, it was different. The trees turned into a black void. The porch light barely reached the first row of trunks, and anything beyond that felt unknowable. Still, I never thought much of it. I told myself the worst thing back there were raccoons and deer. One night in early fall, I had just finished my shift at the grocery store and got back home around 10. I microwaved leftovers, threw on a hoodie, and decided to sit out on the back porch with my food. It was cool and quiet. Too quiet, actually. I remember pausing mid-bite when I realized I couldn't hear crickets. No bugs, no wind, just silence. That's when the motion light at the far end of the yard flicked on. My uncle had set it up on a post because raccoons used to tear through his trash cans. It was about 40 feet from the porch. Normally it only went off when something moved close to it. I expected to see a deer, maybe a stray dog. Instead there was nothing, just grass glowing in that harsh white beam. I tried to brush it off, but the light went out, then came back on again. This time I swore I saw something, a shape, maybe. Like a person, standing just at the edge of where the light reached. Too far to make out details, too still to be an animal. I told myself I was imagining it, grabbed my plate, and went back inside. An hour later, after showering, I was in bed scrolling through my phone when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The blinds weren't closed all the way, and through the small gap I could see the motion light glowing again. Only this time it wasn't flickering on and off. It was staying on. I shut my phone off immediately. My room went dark. For a moment I debated if I should close the blinds completely, but something told me not to move. Not yet. I sat there, staring through the crack, and that's when I saw it. Someone standing in the yard. He wasn't moving, not at all, just a dark outline against the glowing grass. His body angled slightly toward my window, as if he knew I was right there watching. I froze, barely breathing, every muscle in my body screaming to hide. After what felt like forever, the light finally clicked off, plunging the yard into black. The next morning I convinced myself it had to be a trick of the eyes. Sleep deprivation, shadows, something. But that night when I came home from work, I saw something that snapped that excuse in half. Footprints. They started at the back fence, cut straight across the yard, and stopped directly beneath my bedroom window. That was the first night I locked every door twice, shut every blind, and left the TV on for background noise. For a few days, nothing happened. No lights, no shadows, no footprints. I started to relax, thinking maybe it was just some random drifter passing through. Then came the fourth night. It was close to midnight when the power went out. The TV clicked off. The fridge went silent. My phone buzzed once as it switched to battery. I thought it might be an outage, maybe a storm messing with the lines. But then, seconds later, the motion light in the yard flicked on. This time he wasn't at the edge of the light. He was standing halfway across the yard. I remember every detail. The way he leaned forward, head tilted like he was trying to get a better look. The way his arms hung stiff at his sides. I couldn't see his face, but I knew he was staring at me. My first thought was to call my uncle in the main house, but when I picked up my phone, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. No service. I'd had bars all day, but now there was nothing, not even SOS. I stayed locked in my room until sunrise, didn't sleep, didn't move, just sat with my back against the wall, knife from the kitchen clutched in my hand. In the morning, the power was back. My phone worked again, But outside, there were more footprints. Dozens of them, overlapping, circling the house, like he'd spent the entire night walking around looking for a way in. I told my uncle. He brushed it off, said it was probably hunters trespassing, maybe kids messing around. He promised to check the security cameras he had set up, but later claimed they hadn't caught anything. For a while, it stopped. Weeks went by without incident. Then one night I woke up to the sound of the back door handle jiggling. Slow, deliberate turns. The squeak of the metal shifting back and forth. I crept to the kitchen, staying low, heart pounding so hard I thought he could hear it. The motion light outside was on again, glowing through the curtains. I peeked just enough to see his silhouette pressed against the door window. His forehead rested on the glass, like he was listening. I backed away, grabbed my phone, and called my uncle. No answer. I called again and again until finally, after the fourth ring, he picked up. Before I could even explain, he said he was coming. I stayed in the bedroom until I heard his voice outside, yelling, then the sound of his shotgun going off. When I finally came out, he told me he saw the man bolt back into the woods. We searched with flashlights, but never found him. No face, no name, no reason, just footprints leading back into the tree line, swallowed by the dark. I moved out 2 weeks later, and even now, years later, whenever I see a motion light flicker on at night, I get that same feeling in my chest, like someone's still out there, watching. This happened in the summer of 2021. I was driving cross-country for the first time, heading from Illinois down to Florida to visit family. It was supposed to be one of those long, quiet solo trips where you blast music, eat junk food, and just enjoy being on the road. On the second night, somewhere in Georgia, I got too tired to push on. It was close to midnight, and I pulled off at the first exit with a cheap motel. You know the kind. 2 floors, doors opening right onto the parking lot, neon vacancy sign buzzing faintly in the humid air. I'd stayed in places like it before, and it was fine. The clerk was half asleep when I checked in, didn't even ask for ID, just slid me a key card and mumbled, "Room 214, upstairs." I parked under one of the orange lamps, grabbed my duffel, and headed up the outdoor staircase. The room was exactly what you'd expect. Faded carpet, bedspread with a pattern that looked 20 years old, an air conditioner rattling against the wall. But I was too tired to care. I showered, got into bed, and left the TV on low just for background noise. At around 2:30 a.m., I woke up without knowing why. The TV was still on, the AC still droning, but something felt wrong. That heavy, skin-tightening kind of wrong where your body reacts before your brain catches up. I rolled over toward the window, which faced the parking lot. The blinds were mostly closed, but a thin gap ran right down the middle. And through that gap, I saw someone standing on the balcony. At first, I thought it was just another guest having a smoke. But the longer I stared, the more I realized how still the figure was. No shifting, no phone light, no lighter flicker. Just standing there, head tilted slightly toward my window. I told myself not to overreact, probably nothing. But the unease sat in my chest like a weight. I slid out of bed as quietly as I could and went to the door. The peephole looked straight out onto the balcony. He was closer now, not right at my door, but maybe 4 or 5 feet away. A man in a dark hoodie, the hood up despite the heat, just standing with his arms loose at his sides. His head was angled down like he was staring at the floor. But even from that slumped posture, I felt like his eyes were fixed on me. I backed away from the door, every nerve buzzing. I considered calling the front desk, but the phone on the nightstand didn't even have a cord, just a plastic prop. My cell was charging on the dresser, but what was I going to say? There's a guy outside? In a motel like this, that wasn't exactly news. I decided to wait him out. I turned the TV up a little, tried to distract myself, but every few minutes I went back to the peephole. And every time, he was closer. First a few feet away, then leaning against the railing across from my room, then right in front of the door. So close I could only see fabric when I pressed my eye to the glass. That's when he tapped. Not loud, not aggressive, just a single light tap on the door with his knuckle. I jumped back like he'd fired a gun. My breath caught in my throat. Another tap followed, softer, like he was testing how thin the barrier between us really was. I grabbed my duffel, shoved my phone and wallet inside, and backed toward the bathroom, trying to think. If I called 911 by the time they got here, he could force his way in. If I opened the door, I didn't stand a chance. The tapping stopped. For a long moment there was silence. Then the faint creak of the balcony railing. I forced myself to check the peephole again. Empty. The stretch of balcony was clear, no one in sight. I didn't trust it. I waited, crouched by the bed, every muscle in my body screaming. Minutes dragged like hours. Finally, I convinced myself to make a run for it. I slung the duffel over my shoulder, unlocked the door, and yanked it open. The hallway was empty, but on the ground right outside my door was a folded piece of paper. My stomach dropped. I didn't touch it. I just stared. It was perfectly creased, set dead center in front of the threshold like it had been waiting for me. Something in me snapped. I bolted. I sprinted down the balcony, pounded down the staircase, and dove into my car. I didn't even look in the mirrors until I was on the highway, white-knuckled on the steering wheel, heart slamming against my ribs. I drove 3 hours straight before pulling over at a gas station to breathe. When I finally got out, I checked the back seat, the trunk, everywhere, empty. But when I went to put gas in, I noticed something that nearly made me puke. Tucked under the windshield wiper was the same folded piece of paper. I didn't open it. I still haven't. To this day, I don't know how he managed it, how he left one outside my door and another under my wiper when I never saw a car following me. I threw both away without looking inside. I've never stayed in a roadside motel again. And sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night for no reason, I swear I can hear that faint, deliberate tapping, like a reminder that someone, somewhere, still knows exactly where I sleep. I bought the ladder because of the gutters. The house I was renting was older, and every fall the leaves from the big maple tree in the front yard would choke up the drainage until rainwater spilled down the siding. The landlord told me to just keep an eye on it, which was his way of saying it was my problem. So I picked up a 20-foot aluminum ladder from the hardware store and leaned it along the side of the shed when I wasn't using it. It was the kind of item you never think twice about owning. Until my neighbor asked to borrow it. His name was Mark. He lived in the house next to mine, just a little closer to the corner. We'd exchanged waves a few times when I moved in, nothing more. He was in his mid-40s, quiet, the sort of guy who left early in the morning and came back late, usually carrying grocery bags and a six-pack of beer. One Saturday afternoon, I was clearing out leaves when he came up to the fence. "Hey," he called, "you mind if I use that ladder of yours?" Need to check something on the roof. I didn't see any harm. I was the new guy on the block, and lending a tool felt like a good neighborly gesture. I carried it over, he nodded, and that was that. The first time, he returned it the same evening. I noticed muddy smudges on the rungs, but figured roofs were dirty. I leaned it back against the shed and forgot about it. The second time, he didn't bring it back. I had to knock on his door a week later to get it. He apologized, saying he'd been busy, and wheeled it out from behind his garage. I didn't love the delay, but I told myself not to be petty. By the third time, I realized he wasn't asking anymore. I came home one night and the ladder was gone. The next morning I spotted it propped against his house. That was the first time something didn't sit right with me. See, Mark's house was a one-story ranch with a flat roof. There wasn't much reason for him to keep climbing up there, especially in December when the nights were freezing. But I didn't say anything. I dragged the ladder back one afternoon when he wasn't home, and he didn't mention it. Then I noticed things missing from my yard. Small things at first. A rake, a coiled-up extension cord. I eventually found them, tucked along the side of his garage, always a little dirtier, a little more worn than before. That was when I stopped lending him anything voluntarily. But the ladder kept disappearing. One night I heard the sound of metal scraping concrete. I looked out the bedroom window and saw Mark dragging it down the driveway toward his house. No knock at the door. No, "Hey, you mind?" Just taking it, like it belonged to him. I wanted to confront him right then, but something stopped me. The way he moved, quick, nervous, looking over his shoulder, wasn't the way someone acts when they're fixing shingles. It was the way someone acts when they're sneaking. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning I went outside to check if it was back. It wasn't against my shed, but it wasn't leaning on his house either. He'd stashed it somewhere else. That was when I started to wonder what he was really using it for. The answer came sooner than I wanted. A week later, I woke up around 2 a.m. The street was silent. I was about to roll over when I heard it, a metallic clink, faint but distinct, from the side of my house. I froze. My mind tried to dismiss it as wind, as branches. But then came the sound of weight on metal rungs. Slow, deliberate steps. I slid out of bed and crept to the window. At first I didn't see anything. Then my eyes adjusted and there he was. Mark, on my ladder. He was halfway up, pressed close to the siding, his head turned toward my bedroom window. I saw the glint of his glasses in the dim street light. I yanked the blinds down and backed away, my heart hammering so hard I thought he could hear it. For a full minute the sounds continued, rung after rung creaking, then silence. When I finally dared to peek again, the ladder was gone. The next day it was back against my shed as if nothing had happened. I didn't confront him. I should have, I know. But the thing that scared me wasn't that he'd been on the ladder. It was the look on his face when I caught him. Not guilty, not startled, focused, like he'd been studying me. After that, I couldn't relax in the house anymore. I taped the blinds shut. I double-checked the locks every night. I started sleeping with the bedroom light on, as if that would make a difference. But the ladder kept moving. Some nights it was there, some nights it wasn't. Once I found mud smeared along the window ledge, faint but undeniable. I bought a chain and block, ran it through the rungs and secured it to the shed. For a few nights, that gave me peace. Until I woke at 3 in the morning to the sound of metal rattling. I lay there in the dark, holding my breath, listening as he tugged at the lock. No words, no attempt to hide it. Just the steady scrape of chain against aluminum. Then footsteps crunching away. By the time I found the nerve to check, the yard was empty. That was when I realized the ladder wasn't the problem. It was me. He didn't just want the ladder. He wanted access. To my yard, my windows, my life. The ladder was just the tool. The next morning I wheeled it into my car, drove it 2 towns over and left it at a scrapyard. I figured that would be the end of it. But the following night I woke to the same sound. Metal against siding. I bolted upright, staring at the window, knowing there was no ladder anymore. But when I edged the blinds open, my stomach dropped. Mark was there. Not on a ladder. Climbing. His fingers hooked into the drain pipe, his shoes braced against the wall. He was making do without it. I slammed the window shut and dialed 911 with shaking hands. My voice cracked as I told the dispatcher someone was trying to break into my house. By the time the patrol car rolled up, he was gone. The officer searched the yard, shined his light up at the siding, and found nothing but a few faint scuff marks on the drain pipe. I didn't press it further. What was I supposed to say? That my neighbor kept borrowing my ladder to watch me sleep? But I moved out a month later. I didn't wait for the lease to end. I packed my things into a rental truck and left the key under the mat. I never saw Mark again.